With function editor, we're not locked to just manipulating with colors as what we looked before on materials. We also can manipulate with the shapes. So let's go ahead and create a terrain. We'll zoom out and just move a little bit out. Let's take our main camera, bring about, look down so we can see our terrain. And I also want to maybe disable after exposure for now on my camera. Okay, this is not necessary, but I just want to adjust positioning a little bit so we have shadows kind of. It will help us preview our terrain. Okay, now inside the terrain, we weren't going to edit materials, what we did before. Instead, you can just right click and says edit object or double click. And this is our terrain editor. So in a terrain editor, it's what we used to do, change some shapes, other things. But also if we click on a graph, you will have this element which is represent altitude production or graphs on this. And this is same almost in procedural. So this is kind of normal one. But what we want to do, we want to go to edit this. Let's go right click and click edit functions. As we do right here, you can see our second tab appear, function editor. So we did look, okay, oops, let me move this little bit apart. And if remember before, we have our input nodes, we have our output nodes. It's not as many as with the materials, but we have plenty of them. So let's go expand and look on our input nodes. Actually, let's do this way. Let's go right click input. Look, we still have a lot of input nodes that we can use it. And if we look on output nodes, we have only custom dependency. Because all what we have for the materials currently, or for the location, it's altitude. We don't necessarily have anything else. The custom dependency, we can create it, and that is actually very useful. In other tutorial, we're going to use custom dependency. We will go create it where we output different elements. And one thing to keep in mind, you can have a lot of custom dependencies. You don't necessarily need it to just have one. In our case, we'll use one for the roughness, one for the angle, and so on. So we can apply materials just to specific or erosion areas or other things. Otherwise, we don't have those outputs for the materials in other ways. So on the middle, we have our processing or nodes that will affect what we do. And some of them will work just with adjusting with a seed and number production. Some of them just like a math nodes in current station, it just to multiply whatever values it's multiply them. And if we press on the plus, you can see right here, we have it all as input output. And we have our simple fractal that accept all of these properties and creating our node. So let me go ahead and kind of just a little bit shrink down so we can preview what's going on in this area. Okay, let me readjust everything so we can kind of view on the screen. So what I said before, we can modify altitude. Notice we don't have any other properties, but we do have it a way it will manipulate. So if we expand our simple fractal, you'll find some of these properties will available for us to manipulate, and some of those properties, okay, they have submenus, won't be accessible. And the reason is why, because some of function editor cannot manipulate with every property it's have it. So it's depend actually on how it was programmed, how it was on backend, how the all code was done in applications. So not every property will be accessible in function editor, but it will available most of them for us to manipulate. And we can manipulate by touching different modifiers or different things we can affecting, or we can also just manipulate by accessing property inside. And notice what's happened right here. This property, I cannot actually access a normal editor. So I cannot change some of this property that I can go directly inside one single node and align there. So for example, I can say I want to pop up a little bit roughness, reduce elements like this. So and when I'm done, you can see our roughness already increasing. So let's make it even more dramatic. So we'll just pop up a lot of them, and you can see how we increase roughness on those peaks. We cannot necessarily do this inside the terrain editor, but we can do inside the function. So we can modify this. For example, if it's nice, it was created for me first terrain, but I not necessarily like this. So what I can do also, I can go inside the fractals and I can take a different fractal. So what if I select terrain fractal 2? So I create right here, and I'll just go and replacing for now. So let's preview. Notice it's look different. We do have a multiplier, so we don't necessarily want it. We want bypass for now. And let's go open our properties. We'll increase roughness, decrease meta scale, a little bit on this. And you can see now we have a much more interesting terrain. Again, if we're going to terrain editor here, preview, there what we have it. So let's go disable edge so we can preview a little bit more kind of open. Like right here. And you know what, let's click OK. Take main camera and move out. There you go. So we can preview kind of full terrain. Okay, we'll go back to our terrain editor. Notice what's happened right here. We have altered, but it's a little bit too high for me. You know what I mean? If I look, my terrain is very high. So we can modify this terrain. We can modify by properties. We can do this way. Or we also can just add something else. So let's go see if we can modify different without touching any properties inside. So in this case, we can go inside the filters example, and we can have it offset. So let's example, what does offset does? It's accept value. Oops, okay, let me connect right here. And it can change as we want it. So for example, -1. Let's go connect to altitude, and you'll notice it's get smaller. So we reduce the altitude of this by simply have it offset of -1. Let's preview what's happening. Notice how it's smaller right now. And to compare, we can just duplicate two terrains. We'll have it our terrain 2. We'll go inside function editor. And let's just remove this offset. Click OK. And you can see what we've done with offset. This is without offset, and this is when we apply additional modifications of offset. So it just almost shrink down. It's not just actually shrink down, it's almost just took it like this and did this for us. But a little bit better because some of the preserved details in this case. Okay, let's go back. And this is just simple manipulation. So we have our terrain coming in. We have it modified some properties on this by using additional nodes. So let's see what else. Let me increase like this. What else we can do? If we right click, you'll notice we have all of these different manipulation nodes that we can work around. For now, let's work inside the filters. And the filters allowed us to apply specific effect what we wanted. We look on offset. Let's look on opposite in this case, and what it does, it should just inverse for us. So if we connect this way, you'll see where this kind of shorter. Now it's opposite. So now the ways was sharper, it's going down, and other ones going up. It's like inverse almost. But again, this is create very interesting terrain that wasn't originally available for us to do without function editor. The only one biggest problem I found by working with this, it is very addictive. Because when you start playing with these properties, playing with this, you start creating such a unique and interesting terrains that sometimes very hard to stop. So in this case, for example, if I start creating now, I says, okay, I creating this, and because it's going lower, what if I put it offset before? And actually opposite, you can see now it's getting taller. So let's go click OK. Take my main camera, maybe just a little bit realign so I can preview both of them. Let's go up. And you can see on our preview that we have it one before we only just applied, and a second one with little modifications. And we kind of look before this terrain on the left look okay. I think on the right look a little bit more interesting to me, so I can play more with this terrain. Okay, let's go ahead back to our terrain editor. And we just did it very small, very basic adjustments. So we did not do any relations or other things. All what we did, it's create a basic terrain fractal. We used our offset, and we're using another one. But here's the other things. Sometimes you want to modify, and not necessary I want to delete it and recreate it. If we look on our property tab here on the left side, you'll notice we have our name, and also we have drop down. The drop down is allowed us to very fast modify from same group. So for example, I used terrain before. Instead, when I had my granny fractal, I can just go down and change. So for example, if I don't want terrain fractal, I want preview on Rocky Mountains, I can just select it and notice what's changed. Now it's changed. We have the Rocky Mountains, and all these nodes still be working there. So and if I preview and I don't like it because it does not work necessarily as I wanted, I can go back to my previous preset and preview what's happening. A couple things keep in mind. When we change, it will reset some of the settings. So example, let's say if I have it meta scale 4, I change my settings and I went to the Rocky Mountain and go back. Look what's happened to meta scale. So it will reset. So keep this in mind. You can switch between all these nodes, but all your presets that you have it, they will change. And in some cases, if you use special nodes connections, like for example, you have some input values and we connect them. If we change and those values does not exist on another elements, they will be disconnected. So just keep this in mind. You can change, but it will affect some of those properties. If you want to retain those values, you'll need to duplicate it. So you almost need it. Control Command C, V. So copy paste, we can create same one. On this case, I can modify that one. And when I need it, test, so one is test, and I can always just switch. You can switch manually, or you can have a special combiner, but we'll look on those a little bit later on special times when you can apply and kind of switch between them. But overall, remember, if you create one node and you don't modify it yet, all settings, you don't care, you can always go through all of them and change and try different types, see which one work better. Same things will work for the offset. It will showing your group. So right now we're in offset and we have it opposite multiply. So we can always go inside and just play around them with all these properties, but it's will related to these groups. So if you're on the filters, you will go with these. We want to fractals. So you'll see these fractals, same things right here. And we'll see all of them right inside this. So you'll see by the node type or node group, wherever you originally selected. Okay, so let's go ahead and next we start kind of looking a little bit more maybe on the groups. So look on each group and see what each of those groups for our functions for our nodes, the production nodes or manipulation nodes, what they can do. So we kind of see how they divide per groups and just start looking on each group separately. That will be a little bit more intense, so I will try to split them in smaller chunks so it won't be too much information to process. But also, always you can go back and rewatch them again if you need it. Thank you for your viewing.